What is a moment of truth worth? For Chloe Reed, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in debt and despair, that moment was worth the risk of losing everything. When she saw the city's most powerful billionaire, Ethan Caldwell, being played for a fool by his beautiful girlfriend in the very restaurant where she worked, she faced a choice: stay silent and keep her dead-end job, or act and risk the wrath of the rich and powerful. She chose to act, scrawling a few words on a napkin that would change her life forever. She thought he might fire her. She never imagined that the very next morning, a sleek black envelope would arrive, containing a key to a world she could only dream of. But that key didn't just unlock doors to unimaginable wealth. It unlocked a world of danger, betrayal, and a secret far darker than simple infidelity. The Air and Aperture, the rooftop restaurant overlooking the sprawling, glittering expanse of downtown Chicago, was thick with the scent of money. It was a complex fragrance, layered with notes of expensive perfume, aged leather from $1,000 handbags, and the buttery aroma of pan-seared scallops. For Chloe Reed, it was the smell of a life that wasn't hers. Her life smelled of industrial dish soap, burnt coffee, and the faint, antiseptic odor of the hospital wing where her younger sister Zoe was fighting a battle Chloe couldn't afford. Tonight, like every night for the past 2 years, Chloe was a ghost in this gilded paradise. Her uniform, a crisp black blouse and tailored trousers, was her cloak of invisibility. She moved between tables with impracticed grace, her smile a carefully constructed mask that hid the bone-deep exhaustion and the gnawing anxiety that was her constant companion. Her feet throbbed, a dull ache that radiated up her calves, a physical manifestation of the 14-hour double shift she was pulling. All for a few extra dollars that would barely make a dent in the mountain of medical bills that sat on her small kitchen table. Her art was her only escape. In her cramped studio apartment, canvases leaned against every wall, vibrant splashes of color and emotion that stood in stark contrast to her monochrome existence. She painted the city not as the glittering jewel seen from Aperture, but as a creature of shadow and light, of struggle and defiant beauty. She painted Zoe's smile, trying to capture it before the illness stole it completely. But paint and canvas cost money, and her dreams, like Zoe's health, felt like they were slipping through her fingers. At 9:15 p.m., the energy in the restaurant shifted. A hush fell over the room, a collective intake of breath as heads turned toward the entrance. Ethan Caldwell had arrived. He wasn't just wealthy, he was a force of nature, a self-made tech magnate who had built an empire. Caldwell Industries, from a few lines of code in a garage. His face, often gracing the covers of business magazines, was even more imposing in person. Sharp, angular features, eyes the color of a stormy sky that seemed to miss nothing, and an aura of quiet, unshakable authority that made even the most arrogant CEO in the room feel like a schoolboy. On his arm was Victoria Vance. She was the perfect accessory for a man like him, impossibly beautiful, dressed in a shimmering silver gown that clung to her like a second skin. She was a creature of purebred elegance. Her family, the Vances, were old money, their name etched into the city's philanthropic foundations and country clubs. She laughed, a musical sound that filled the air. But Chloe, an artist of human emotion, noticed it never quite reached her eyes. They were seated at table 7, Chloe's section. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Serving Ethan Caldwell was a test. One wrong move, one spilled drop of water, and she could be fired. Her manager, Mr. Henderson, a man whose smile was as rare as a solar eclipse, had made that perfectly clear. "Reed," he'd hissed in the kitchen, "don't mess this up. Caldwell's check could cover our payroll for a month. Be perfect." Chloe took a deep breath, smoothed her apron, and approached the table, her professional mask firmly in place. "Good evening, Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Vance. My name is Chloe, and I will be your server tonight. May I start you with some water?" Ethan barely looked up from the menu, his focus absolute. "Still, 2 glasses." His voice was a low baritone, clipped and precise. Victoria, however, beamed at Chloe. "Oh, thank you, Chloe. And perhaps a bottle of the 1998 Chateau Margaux. Ethan, darling, you don't mind, do you?" "Whatever you like," he murmured, his attention already on his phone. which had buzzed silently on the table. For the next hour, Chloe was the model of efficiency. She refilled their water glasses before they were empty, presented the wine with practiced flair, and described the specials with an eloquence that belied her exhaustion. She observed their dynamic, the way an artist observes a subject. Ethan was reserved, his mind clearly occupied by matters far beyond the restaurant. He was polite but distant. Victoria, in contrast, was a constant performance. She touched his arm frequently, laughed a little too loudly at his brief remarks, and kept angling her body so the diamond necklace he'd gifted her caught the light perfectly. It was a flawless portrayal of an adored girlfriend. The crack in the facade appeared during the main course. Ethan took a call, his voice low and serious, as he stepped away from the table toward the panoramic windows. "No, the acquisition is non-negotiable. Push the price. They'll fold." Left alone, Victoria's entire demeanor changed. The dazzling smile vanished, replaced by a tense, predatory stillness. Her own phone, a slender rose gold device, lit up on the table. Chloe was approaching with a fresh bread basket when she saw it. Victoria snatched the phone up, her movements sharp and furtive. Her thumb flew across the screen. Chloe was close enough to see the name on the incoming message before Victoria angled the screen away. Sebastian. Chloe's blood ran cold. Sebastian Croft. The name was infamous. A ruthless hedge fund manager, a corporate raider known for his hostile takeovers. He was also Ethan Caldwell's most bitter and public rival. Their companies were locked in a fierce battle over a new piece of AI technology, a project Ethan had codenamed Chimera. It was the talk of the financial world. Victoria's face was a mask of concentration. She typed a quick reply, her perfectly manicured nails tapping frantically. Then she looked up, her eyes scanning the room. She thought she was unobserved. She slipped her phone back into her purse, took a delicate sip of wine, and composed her features back into the picture of serene beauty, just as Ethan returned. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding back into his seat. "Just a fire to put out." "It's never ending for you, my love," Victoria cooed, placing her hand on his. "You work too hard." Chloe felt a knot of unease tighten in her stomach. It could be nothing, a coincidence, but the furtiveness, the name, it felt wrong. She retreated to her station near the kitchen, her mind racing. 15 minutes later, Victoria excused herself. "I'll be right back, darling. Just need to powder my nose." Chloe was on her way to clear a nearby table when she saw Victoria bypass the hallway to the ladies' room and slip onto the deserted outdoor terrace. Curiosity and a sense of dread got the better of her. Keeping to the shadows of a large potted plant, Chloe watched. Victoria was on the phone, her back to the restaurant. Her voice, no longer musical, was a sharp, urgent whisper. "No, I couldn't get the full specs," Victoria hissed into the phone. "He's being more careful since the last breach." "Yes, Sebastian, I know what's at stake. My family is counting on this. Just tell me you have a plan B. He mentioned something about pushing the price on the acquisition." "They'll fold," he said. "I don't know who they are." "Look, I have to go. Just be ready. Chimera's final test phase is next week. That's our window." She snapped the phone shut, took a deep, shuddering breath, and pasted the radiant smile back on her face before turning to walk back inside. Chloe felt as if she'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just cheating. This was a betrayal on a scale she could barely comprehend. Victoria wasn't just two-timing Ethan Caldwell with his rival. She was feeding him corporate intelligence. She was helping Sebastian Croft destroy the man who was lavishing her with diamonds and vintage wine. The phrase, "my family is counting on this," echoed in Chloe's mind. It wasn't about love or passion. It was a cold, calculated transaction. Chloe leaned against the wall, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. What should she do? Her first instinct, born of years of keeping her head down, was to do nothing. Forget what she saw, what she heard. It was not her world, not her fight. Getting involved was a surefire way to lose her job, the one thing standing between her and utter financial ruin. Mr. Henderson would fire her on the spot for even speaking out of turn to a guest like Caldwell. She needed this job. Zoe needed this job. The image of her sister, pale and weak in her hospital bed, flashed in her mind. She couldn't risk it. But then, she looked back into the dining room. She saw Ethan Caldwell, a man who commanded industries and shaped markets, sitting alone, completely oblivious to the viper he was dining with. He looked tired, the immense weight of his empire visible in the slight slump of his shoulders. For a fleeting second, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man being brutally deceived. Her conscience warred with her fear. To stay silent felt like being complicit. It felt cowardly. Her father, a simple man who had worked as a mechanic his whole life, had always told her, "Chloe, you only have two things that nobody can ever take from you, your word and your character. Don't ever sell either one cheap." What was her character worth if she walked away? Victoria returned to the table, her performance seamless. "So sorry, darling." There was a cue. Ethan just nodded, his mind elsewhere. Chloe watched them, a storm raging inside her. The bill was coming soon. Her window of opportunity was closing. She thought of the risks. She could be wrong. It could be a misunderstanding. They would both turn on her, a lowly waitress accusing the city's golden couple. She'd be laughed out of the restaurant, blacklisted from every other establishment in the city. But then she thought of the words, "Chimera's final test phase is next week. That's our window." That sounded like more than a simple affair. That sounded like a planned corporate attack. Her decision solidified in a single, heart-stopping moment of clarity. She couldn't live with herself if she did nothing. But a direct confrontation was suicide. She had to be smarter than that. She needed to give him a warning, a breadcrumb he could follow himself. As she prepared their bill, her hand trembled slightly. She took a clean, crisp linen napkin from the service station. With a pen from her apron, her usually steady artist's hand felt clumsy. What could she write? It had to be something that would pique his curiosity without revealing her identity. Something that would make him think, not just react. She thought about the scene, the small details her artist's eye had captured. The way the light from the chandelier had glinted off the polished silver of his spoon when he wasn't looking, creating a distorted reflection of the room behind him. She wrote quickly, her heart in her throat, "Mr. Caldwell, the reflection in your spoon shows more than you see." She's not just looking at another man, she's looking at your downfall. Check her last call from the terrace, the one she made to Sebastian. A friend. She folded the napkin into a small, tight square. Her hands were clammy. This was insane. This was career suicide. When she delivered the leather billfold to the table, Ethan placed his credit card inside without looking at it. Chloe's moment had come. "Thank you for dining with us, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice miraculously steady. As she placed the billfold back on the table after running the card, she let the folded napkin slip from her palm, letting it fall right next to his hand. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. He glanced down at the small white square, a flicker of curiosity in his tired eyes. Victoria was busy gathering her purse, oblivious. Chloe turned and walked away, her legs feeling like lead. She didn't look back. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide in the kitchen until they were gone. But she forced herself to walk calmly to her station, her back rigid. She could feel his eyes on her back. Or maybe it was just her imagination. The next 5 minutes stretched into an eternity. She heard the scrape of chairs, the murmur of their voices as they left. She risked a glance. They were gone. The napkin was also gone. The rest of the night passed in a blur of anxiety. Every time the kitchen door swung open, Chloe expected to see Mr. Henderson, his face thunderous, ready to fire her. Every shadow in her peripheral vision looked like a security guard coming to escort her out. She mechanically cleared tables, stacked dishes, and polished silverware, her mind a maelstrom of second-guessing and regret. What had she done? She had gambled her entire livelihood, Zoe's future, on a moral impulse. By the time she left the restaurant at 2 a.m., the city was quiet. The cool night air did little to calm the fire in her gut. Her walk to the bus stop was filled with visions of unemployment, of eviction notices, of the hospital calling about overdue payments. She barely slept, tossing and turning in her small bed. The words she'd written on the napkin seared into her brain. The next morning, she arrived for her shift hollow-eyed and braced for the worst. She walked through the staff entrance, her stomach churning. She clocked in. Nothing. She went to the locker room to change. Still nothing. Mr. Henderson was in his office, barking orders into the phone, and didn't even glance her way. Maybe Ethan Caldwell had crumpled up the napkin and thrown it away, dismissing it as a prank. Maybe he'd read it and decided the crazy waitress wasn't worth his time. The thought brought a strange mixture of profound relief and a tiny, inexplicable sting of disappointment. She had taken a huge risk, and it had amounted to nothing. She was still just Chloe Reed, waitress, invisible. The lunch rush began, and she threw herself into the familiar, mind-numbing rhythm of work, taking orders, carrying heavy trays, forcing smiles for demanding customers. It was during a lull around 3 p.m. that a courier arrived. He was dressed in a sharp, all-black uniform with no company logo, and he held a single, sleek, black envelope. "Delivery for Chloe Reed," the courier announced, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet restaurant. Every head turned. Chloe froze, a water pitcher halfway to a glass. Mr. Henderson emerged from his office, his brow furrowed. "I'm Chloe Reed," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The courier consulted a tablet, then nodded. "Signature required." She numbly signed the screen, her hand shaking so badly her signature was an illegible scrawl. He handed her the envelope. It was made of a thick, heavy cardstock she had never felt before, with a subtle, textured finish. It was utterly stark, with no return address. Just her name, printed in clean, silver font. She could feel the weight of everyone's stares. With trembling fingers, she broke the wax seal on the back, a simple, stylized C. Inside were two things. The first was a card, just as heavy and black as the envelope. It was a credit card, but unlike any she had ever seen. It was made of anodized titanium, its weight substantial in her palm. There was a name, Chloe Reed, and a series of numbers, but no bank logo, no Visa, no MasterCard, just a small, discreet chip. She recognized it instantly from articles she'd read about the ultra-rich. It was an American Express Centurion card, the legendary black card, available by invitation only to the world's wealthiest individuals. It was said to have no preset spending limit. The second item was a small folded note, made of the same luxurious paper. The handwriting was bold and decisive. "For your honesty. Be at the north entrance of Lincoln Park at 5 p.m. A car will be waiting." E.C. Chloe's breath hitched. E.C. Ethan Caldwell. He hadn't ignored the note. He had acted on it. And this was her reward? Or was it a summons? A test? The card felt like a burning coal in her hand. It represented everything she didn't have. Freedom, power, security. It was the answer to every single one of her prayers. It was the money for Zoe's experimental treatment, the key to getting out of debt, the means to finally focus on her art. It was also terrifying. "Well, what is it?" Mr. Henderson demanded, peering over her shoulder. His eyes widened as he saw the card. He recognized it too. A look of stunned disbelief crossed his face. "It's personal," Chloe stammered, quickly sliding the card and note back into the envelope. The atmosphere for the rest of her shift was bizarre. The other staff treated her with a strange new deference, whispering when they thought she wasn't looking. Mr. Henderson was uncharacteristically silent, watching her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. The black envelope had changed everything. She was no longer invisible. Meanwhile, in a sterile, glass-walled office 50 floors above the city, Ethan Caldwell was dismantling his life with the same dispassionate precision he used to dismantle a failing company. He had found the napkin after Chloe had walked away. His first instinct was to dismiss it. But something in the waitress's eyes, a flicker of fear and conviction, had made him pause. The mention of Sebastian was a cold spear in his gut. He had pocketed the note. At home in his sterile penthouse that Victoria had tried and failed to warm, with expensive art and designer furniture, he had waited until she was asleep. Then he went to his office. He wasn't a man who relied on feelings. He relied on data. And the note had given him a data point to check, her last call from the terrace. With a few keystrokes, he accessed his personal security system's logs. The restaurant terrace was covered by a long-range microphone designed for security. It was a simple matter to isolate the audio from the time Victoria was outside. He listened, his face an unreadable mask, as her hushed, treacherous words filled the silence of his office. Yes, Sebastian, I know what's at stake. Chimera's final test phase is next week. That's our window. The betrayal was so absolute, so cold it didn't even inspire rage, just a profound, chilling clarity. Every strange question she'd asked about his work, every conveniently timed charity gala that coincided with his late nights at the office, every shared glance he'd noticed between her and Sebastian Croft at social events, it all snapped into focus. He wasn't just being cheated on, he was the target of a coordinated corporate espionage plot, and his girlfriend was the inside agent. He then pulled the complete phone records. Dozens of calls and encrypted messages to a burner phone he easily traced back to one of Sebastian Croft's shell corporations. He saw the large cash transfers from an offshore account linked to Croft into an account owned by Victoria's father, whose textile empire was, as Ethan's researchers quickly confirmed, on the verge of bankruptcy. It was all there. A simple, sordid transaction. Her family's salvation in exchange for his company's ruin. When Victoria came down for breakfast the next morning, dressed in silk pajamas and smiling brightly, he was waiting for her in the dining room. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. He simply played the audio from the terrace. Her face went white. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "Ethan, I can explain," she stammered, her voice trembling. "No, you can't," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "You can, however, pack. My security will escort you from the building. Anything you leave behind will be incinerated. Your access to all my accounts and properties has been terminated, effective 10 minutes ago. A legal team is waiting for my signal to file charges for corporate espionage. Whether I give that signal depends entirely on how quickly and quietly you disappear from my life." She began to sob, a pathetic, theatrical display that no longer had any effect on him. "My family, they're ruined." "That sounds like a personal problem," Ethan said, turning his back on her. "You have 1 hour." After she was gone, the penthouse felt vast and empty. He stood by the window looking down at the city. He felt nothing for Victoria. She was a bad investment he was now writing off. But the waitress? Chloe Reed. He had his head of security, a former Mossad agent named Gregory, find out everything about her in under an hour. Her struggles, her sister's illness, her art. She had had every reason to stay silent. She worked for tips, was drowning in debt, and had a sick family member. Warning him served no logical purpose for her. It was a pure, uncalculated act of integrity, a quality he had found to be exceedingly rare, especially in his world. She hadn't asked for a reward. She had simply given him the truth and walked away, expecting nothing. That, he decided, was worth a great deal. He made 2 calls. The first was to his contact at American Express. The second was to his personal car service. Honesty deserved a reward. But more than that, he was intrigued. He needed to meet the one person in the city who had told him the truth. Chloe left work at 4:30 p.m., her mind a whirlwind. Mr. Henderson had awkwardly told her to take the rest of the day, a thing that had never happened before. She walked the few blocks to Lincoln Park, the black envelope feeling heavy in her purse. Was she walking into a trap? Was this some bizarre game for a bored billionaire? At precisely 5 p.m., a black Rolls-Royce Phantom, so silent it seemed to materialize out of the air, pulled up to the curb. The tinted rear window glided down, revealing Gregory, a man with a shaved head and an impassive face that looked like it was carved from granite. "Ms. Reed," he said, his voice a gravelly monotone, "Mr. Caldwell is expecting you." Her heart hammering, Chloe slid into the opulent leather interior. The car smelled of wealth, a clean, subtle scent that was the polar opposite of the restaurant. They drove in silence, gliding through the city's arteries. Chloe stared out the window, watching her world of cracked pavement and bustling crowds give way to pristine streets and stately, imposing architecture. The car didn't stop at a towering skyscraper or a lavish mansion. It pulled into the private garage of a discreet, elegant building in the Gold Coast. Gregory led her to a private elevator, which opened directly into a breathtaking penthouse apartment. The entire west wall was a floor-to-ceiling window, offering a godlike view of the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. The space was minimalist and modern, decorated in shades of gray, black, and chrome. It was impeccably clean and felt more like a corporate suite than a home. Ethan Caldwell was standing by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He turned as she entered. He had changed from his business suit into a simple black cashmere sweater and dark trousers. Without the armor of his suit, he looked younger, but no less intense. "Ms. Reed," he said, his voice calm. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. Can I get you anything? Water? Wine?" "Water would be fine. Thank you," she managed to say, her voice sounding small in the vast room. He poured her a glass himself and sat in an armchair opposite her. For a moment, he just studied her, his stormy gray eyes analytical, as if he were trying to solve a complex equation. "The note you left me," he began, getting straight to the point. "It was an exceptionally risky thing to do. You could have been fired. You could have been wrong. Why did you do it?" Chloe clutched her glass of water, the condensation cold against her nervous fingers. She met his gaze directly. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because no one deserves to be betrayed like that. Not just personally, but what she was doing was more than that. It was dangerous." He nodded slowly. "It was. More dangerous than you know. Victoria Vance was not just my girlfriend. She was a willing accomplice in a corporate espionage plot orchestrated by my chief rival, Sebastian Croft. They were planning to use the information she stole to sabotage the launch of my company's most important project, an action that would have cost my shareholders billions and thousands of people their jobs." Chloe listened, stunned by the scale of the deception. "I heard her mention chimera." "You have good ears," Ethan said with a slight, mirthless smile. "Your warning allowed me to get ahead of it. I've secured our data, cut off her access, and neutralized the immediate threat. You didn't just save me from personal embarrassment, Ms. Reed. You may very well have saved my company. The card I sent you is a small token of my gratitude." "Mr. Caldwell, I can't accept this," Chloe said, pulling the black card from her purse and placing it on the table between them. "It's too much. I didn't do it for a reward." He looked at the card, then back at her. A flicker of something, surprise, respect, passed through his eyes. "I know you didn't. That's why you deserve it. I had my head of security look into your situation. I know about your sister Zoe. Her condition, the treatments are expensive." Chloe flinched, feeling exposed. "You investigated me?" "I don't operate on incomplete data, Ms. Reed. I needed to know who I was dealing with," he said, his tone matter-of-fact, not apologetic. "Use the card. Get your sister the best care in the world. Consider it a signing bonus." "A signing bonus? For what?" Chloe asked, confused. Here it was. The proposition. He was going to offer her money to be his new girlfriend, his new Victoria, a prettier, more honest piece of arm candy. The thought soured in her stomach, but he surprised her. "I'm offering you a job," he said. "A real one. I've spent my life surrounded by people who tell me what they think I want to hear. Lawyers, executives, board members, sycophants. They are paid to agree with me. Victoria was the epitome of that. What I lack is an honest perspective, an outside view. You, Ms. Reed, are observant. You notice things. The reflection in a spoon, the nuance in a conversation. You see the world from a different angle. As an artist, it's your gift." He leaned forward, his intensity palpable. "I want to hire you as a consultant. Your official title will be Strategic Observational Analyst. It's a title I just invented. Your job will be to be my shadow in meetings, to observe people, to listen to what's not being said, to give me your unfiltered, honest opinion. You will report only to me. In return, I will pay you a salary of $500,000 a year, and the card is yours to keep for any and all expenses." Chloe was speechless. It was the most absurd, insane, wonderful job offer she had ever heard. It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman, but a golden lifeline was still a chain. "Why me?" she finally asked. "I'm a waitress. I have an art degree. I don't know anything about your world." "Exactly," he said. "You're not from my world. You're not corrupted by it. You have no preconceived notions, no hidden agendas. All I require from you is the same quality you showed me last night. Brutal honesty. Can you do that? $500,000. Zoe's future. An end to the crushing weight of debt. The freedom to paint. It was all being handed to her on a silver platter. All she had to do was say yes. Yes, she said, her voice firm, surprising even herself. I can do that. Good, Ethan said, standing up. You start tomorrow. Gregory will pick you up at 8 a.m. He will also arrange for a consultation with Dr. Annabelle Lee at Johns Hopkins. She is the leading expert on your sister's condition. All expenses will be covered. He walked her to the elevator, the meeting clearly over. As the doors were about to close, he stopped them. One more thing, Chloe, he said, using her first name for the first time. Welcome to Caldwell Industries. The elevator descended, and Chloe leaned against the cool metal wall, her legs weak. In the span of 24 hours, her life had been irrevocably altered. She had stepped out of the shadows and into the blinding light of Ethan Caldwell's world. She clutched the black card in her hand. It was no longer just a piece of metal. It was a contract, and she had a terrifying feeling that she hadn't yet read all the fine print. The next few weeks were a surreal dream. Chloe moved out of her tiny apartment and into a sleek, modern condo in a secure building, all arranged by Ethan's staff. It was beautiful and spacious. With a spare room, she immediately converted into an art studio with a perfect northern light. True to his word, Ethan flew Zoe and their mother to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore on a private jet. Dr. Lee, a woman with kind eyes and a brilliant mind, was optimistic. She started Zoe on a new regimen of treatments, and for the first time in years, Chloe felt a spark of genuine hope. The weight that had been crushing her for so long began to lift. Her new job was as strange as it was demanding. She spent her days in the Caldwell Industries Tower, a gleaming spire of black glass and steel. She sat in the corner of boardrooms, a silent observer with a notebook. The executives, all sharp suits and sharper smiles, initially dismissed her. Who was this young woman in simple, elegant dresses who never spoke but watched everything with an unnervingly keen eye? But Ethan listened to her. After every meeting, he would ask for her assessment. "The head of marketing, Mr. Shaw," she'd say. "He agrees with you too quickly. He doesn't believe in the new campaign. He's just afraid to challenge you." Or, "The legal team from the merger, their lead counsel kept touching his tie whenever you mentioned the liability clause. I think they're hiding something." She was often right. Her observations, born from an artist's ability to see subtle shifts in color, mood, and body language, provided Ethan with a unique, human-centric layer of data he'd never had before. He began to trust her instincts implicitly. They developed a rhythm, late nights in his office, going over reports, fueled by coffee and takeout. He was a demanding boss, but fair. And slowly, Chloe began to see the man behind the billionaire myth. She saw his relentless drive, his frustration with incompetence, but also moments of dry wit and a deep, hidden loneliness. He never spoke of Victoria, but Chloe could see the wall he had built around himself, brick by impenetrable brick. Their relationship was strictly professional, yet an undercurrent of something else was beginning to form. A bond forged in shared purpose and mutual respect. He started asking about her art, and one day he insisted on visiting her new studio. He stood for a long time in front of a half-finished canvas, a portrait of Zoe, her face a mixture of pain and fierce hope. "You're very talented," he said, his voice quiet. "You capture not just what she looks like, but what she feels." It was the highest compliment she had ever received, and coming from this man who dealt in facts and figures, it meant everything. But the ghost of Victoria Vance and the threat of Sebastian Croft still lingered. Ethan had neutralized the immediate danger, but Croft was not a man to accept defeat. Chloe had a gnawing feeling that this wasn't over. The other shoe had yet to drop. It dropped on a Tuesday. A damning story broke in a major financial newspaper alleging that Caldwell Industries' flagship product had a critical security flaw. The article was filled with technical jargon and quotes from an anonymous, high-level source. The stock price plummeted. Ethan was furious, a cold, controlled fury that was more frightening than any shouting rage. "This is Croft's work," he snarled, pacing his office. "He's feeding them lies. But the technical details, they're too accurate. This is more than a guess." He has a new source inside my company. Panic set in at the company. A witch hunt began for the mole. The trust Ethan had been building with his team began to fray. That evening, Chloe was leaving the office when she received a text from an unknown number. I know what you did. I know who you are. Meet me at the bar at the Peninsula Hotel. 10 p.m. Come alone. If you tell Caldwell, the next story will be about his waitress consultant and her very sick little sister. Chloe's blood turned to ice. It was a threat, clear and direct. She knew with chilling certainty who it was from. Sebastian Croft. He had found her. The bar at the Peninsula was a den of quiet power, all dark wood, soft leather, and hushed conversations. Chloe felt terribly out of place, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She had told no one, not Ethan, not Gregory. The threat against Zoe was a line she wouldn't let anyone cross. She had to face this herself. She spotted him in a secluded booth in the back. Sebastian Croft was exactly as the tabloids painted him, handsome in a predatory way, with slicked back dark hair and eyes that held a chilling combination of charm and malice. He was nursing a glass of scotch, the picture of casual arrogance. "Ms. Reed," he said as she approached, a slow reptilian smile spreading across his face. "I'm so glad you could make it. Please sit." Chloe remained standing. "What do you want?" "Direct." "I like that," he chuckled. "What I want is simple. You're close to Caldwell now. You sit in his meetings. You have his ear. He trusts you. I want you to be for me what Victoria so spectacularly failed to be, my eyes and ears." "You want me to spy on him?" Chloe said, her voice dripping with disgust. "Spying is such an ugly word. I prefer strategic partnership," he purred. "I will pay you double whatever he's paying you. I'll set up a trust for your sister that will guarantee her health for the rest of her life. All you have to do is provide me with a few key pieces of information about Project Chimera." Chloe stared at him, a cold resolve hardening within her. This man who had tried to ruin Ethan, who had used Victoria's desperation to his own advantage, was now trying to do the same to her. He saw her as just another pawn, another commodity to be bought. "And if I say no?" she asked, her voice steady. His smile vanished. "Then things get unpleasant. I have a team of very creative journalists on my payroll. The story of the billionaire and his pet waitress would be just the beginning. I'd dig into your family's finances. I'd find a way to interfere with your sister's treatment. I would make your life a living hell until you have nothing left. Do you understand?" It was a checkmate. He was threatening the one thing she couldn't bear to lose. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her resolve. But then it was replaced by something else. Rage. She thought of her father's words. "Your word and your character. Don't ever sell either one cheap." "I understand perfectly," Chloe said, her voice dangerously quiet. She looked him straight in the eye. "And my answer is no." For a second, Sebastian looked genuinely surprised. He wasn't used to being told no. "You're making a very big mistake, little girl." "The only mistake was you thinking I could be bought," she retorted. She turned and walked out of the bar, her legs shaking but her head held high. She knew she had just declared war. She went straight to Ethan's penthouse. He opened the door to find her pale and trembling. "Chloe, what's wrong, he asked, his usual stoicism replaced by genuine concern. In a rush of words, she told him everything. The text message, the meeting, Sebastian's threats. When she finished, the look on Ethan's face was terrifying. It was a glacial fury, the kind that preceded earthquakes. "He threatened your sister," Ethan said, his voice a low growl. He picked up his phone. "Gregory, I want a full security detail on Chloe and her family, effective immediately. I want them untouchable, and I want everything you have on Sebastian Croft. His finances, his associates, his mistresses, his gambling habits. Everything. I want to bury him." He hung up and turned to Chloe. He took a step closer, his presence filling the room. "I am sorry, Chloe. I brought you into this world. I put you in his line of fire. I will fix this." "No," she said, looking up at him. "We will fix this. He thinks I'm his weakness. Let's make me his downfall." A new plan began to form, born not in a boardroom, but in the mind of an artist. It was a plan of misdirection, of playing on assumptions, a gambit that required a perfect performance. He's arrogant, Chloe said, her mind working furiously. He thinks he's in control. He won't believe I just walked away. He'll think I'm scared and just need more convincing. So let's convince him. The next day, Chloe accidentally left a notebook in a conference room she knew was being cleaned by a service with loose ties to one of Croft's shell companies. Inside the notebook, amid sketches and art notes, were scribbled, frantic-looking paragraphs containing highly technical but ultimately false details about a fatal flaw in Project Chimera's core algorithm. It was bait, carefully designed by Ethan's top engineers to be irresistible to a competitor. Then Chloe began to play her part. At work, she appeared distracted and anxious. She took hushed phone calls where she would argue with a fictional collector about her sister's overdue medical bills, making sure to be overheard. Ethan, in on the plan, started treating her more coldly in public, creating the illusion of a falling out. The final piece of the performance was a staged, explosive argument between Chloe and Ethan in the glass-walled lobby of the Caldwell Tower, a place with dozens of witnesses and security cameras. "I can't live like this," she shouted, her voice filled with practiced desperation. "This isn't what I signed up for." "You signed up to do a job," Ethan roared back, playing his role perfectly. "If you can't handle the pressure, then maybe you don't belong here." Chloe stormed out, making sure to look utterly devastated. The entire performance was, of course, leaked within the hour. 2 days later, exactly as they'd predicted, Sebastian Croft contacted her again. This time, the offer was even bigger, delivered through a discreet lawyer. He believed he had broken her. He thought she was now a desperate, discarded employee, ready to sell out her former boss for revenge and money. Chloe agreed to meet. The location was a private suite at a different hotel. She knew she would be searched. The plan couldn't rely on technology. It had to rely on her. "I've made my decision," she told Sebastian, her voice betraying a believable mix of fear and greed. "I'll help you, but I want the money from my sister's trust wired up front, to an offshore account, and I want a guarantee of my own safety." Sebastian smiled, triumphant. "Of course, a wise decision." He pushed a tablet toward her. "Just one last thing. I need you to confirm that these details from your notebook are accurate. This is the flaw we're going to exploit." Chloe looked at the screen. It was their bait, laid out perfectly. She pretended to study it, her heart pounding. This was the most critical moment. "Yes," she said, her voice a whisper. "That's it. That's the flaw he's been trying to hide for months." And then she executed her own gambit, the artist's gambit. "But there's something else," she added, leaning in conspiratorially. "That's just the software flaw. There's a hardware vulnerability too, one he only told me about. It's in the primary server's cooling system. If you create a power surge at a specific time during the final diagnostic, say 3:15 a.m. on Friday, it won't just crash the system, it will cause a cascade failure and physically fry the server banks. It will set him back years. He'll be ruined." She had invented every word of it. It was a lie wrapped in a lie, a detail so specific and destructive that it preyed on Sebastian's greed and arrogance. It was the artistic flourish on their trap. Sebastian's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. This was even better than he'd hoped. Total annihilation. He agreed to her terms. The next 48 hours were the most tense of Chloe's life. Ethan and his team worked in a secret command center, tracking Sebastian's movements. They watched as he mobilized his own team of hackers. They saw the massive short positions he was taking against Caldwell Industries stock, betting billions on its collapse. He was walking right into their trap. At 3:10 a.m. on Friday morning, Chloe was with Ethan in the command center, watching a wall of monitors. "He's in," Ethan's lead tech said. "He's bypassed the first firewall. He's going for the false algorithm flaw." They watched as Croft's hackers exploited the bait flaw. On the surface, it looked like they were succeeding. "Now he's going for the power grid," the tech announced. "He's trying to trigger the surge." This was Chloe's lie, the one she had sold him, and he had bought it completely. By attempting to create a power surge directed at a non-existent vulnerability, Sebastian was rerouting massive amounts of data through a single monitored channel. He was essentially announcing his illegal intrusion to the entire world and creating an undeniable digital trail that led directly back to him. Got him, Ethan said, a grim smile on his face. We have the entire attack, packaged and authenticated. He just handed us a signed confession. He made a single phone call. We have a breach. Send it to the feds. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Sebastian Croft. Before the stock market opened, federal agents raided his offices. Faced with irrefutable evidence of market manipulation, attempted corporate sabotage, and a dozen other felonies, his empire crumbled in a matter of hours. The news story wasn't about Caldwell Industries' flaw. It was about Sebastian Croft's arrest. Caldwell stock, after a brief dip, soared to an all-time high. It was over. That evening, Chloe stood with Ethan on the balcony of his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below them like a carpet of fallen stars. The air was cool and clean. We did it, she said softly. No, Chloe, he said, turning to face her. His usually guarded eyes were open and filled with an emotion she had never seen there before. You did it. Your courage, your cleverness. You beat him at his own game using nothing but your wits. He was standing very close now. The professional distance between them had vanished, burned away in the crucible of the last few weeks. I fired Victoria because she betrayed my company, he said, his voice a low murmur. But I cut her out of my life because she had no integrity. And then you walked in, a person who risked everything for that one quality. You showed me what I was missing, not just in my business, but in my life. He reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her. The job is yours for as long as you want it, he continued, but my offer has changed. I don't just want you as a consultant, Chloe. I want you as a partner in everything. Chloe looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't see a billionaire or a boss. She saw Ethan, a man who was lonely, brilliant, and fiercely protective. A man who saw her, truly saw her, not just as a waitress or an analyst, but as the artist and the woman she was. In his world of black and white data, she had brought color and nuance. And in her world of struggle and uncertainty, he had offered strength and stability. I think, she said, a slow, genuine smile spreading across her face, I'd like that very much. He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss that was not about power or possession, but about a shared victory and a new beginning, high above the city that had once made her feel so small and invisible. She was invisible no more. Chloe's story is a powerful reminder that integrity is a currency more valuable than gold. It shows us that true strength isn't about the power you wield, but about the choices you make when you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. She started as a waitress, invisible to the world she served, but her one act of courage created a ripple that not only changed her life, but exposed a world of deceit. She proved that you don't need $1 billion to be powerful. You just need a character that can't be bought. What do you think you would have done in Chloe's position? Let us know in the comments below. If her incredible journey from a struggling artist to a corporate warrior inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that doing the right thing can lead to the most unexpected and wonderful places. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of courage, drama, and incredible twists of fate. Thank you for listening.